A poor Filipino girl lived in a small, weathered home on the outskirts of her town, where the paint on the walls was peeling and the roof leaked during heavy rains. Her family struggled to make ends meet, with her father working long hours as a tricycle driver and her mother doing odd jobs to provide basic necessities. Despite the challenges, the girl's heart was full of dreams and her mind constantly wandered to melodies she wished to share with the world. Every morning, before the sun rose, she would wake up and quietly practice singing in the tiny corner of her room, using an old, scratched-up mirror to watch herself as she poured her emotions into every note. The house often echoed with her soft, yet passionate voice, a sound that was both fragile and powerful. Her younger siblings would sit silently, listening in awe, captivated by the raw honesty in her singing. Even though her surroundings were modest, she found beauty in simple things: the sound of birds outside her window, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the smiles of her family when she sang a tune that lifted everyone's spirits. Music became her escape, a place where her dreams felt tangible, and where the harsh realities of life faded, even if only for a few moments each day. The girl knew she didn't have access to expensive lessons or grand instruments, but she believed that her voice and her heart could be enough to make a difference. Encouraged by her family's quiet support and the small audience of neighbors who occasionally peeked in to listen, she decided that one day she would perform on a bigger stage, one where her story and her voice could reach people far beyond the small town she called home. One day, she heard about a local talent show being held at the town's community center, a place known for discovering hidden gems. The thought of performing in front of strangers both thrilled and terrified her. She spent days rehearsing, repeating the same songs over and over, trying to perfect each note while making sure she stayed true to the emotion behind the lyrics. When the day of the audition arrived, she held onto her worn-out notebook, where she had scribbled the words of her favorite songs, and took a deep breath, stepping into a room filled with strangers whose eyes and expressions seemed intimidating at first. Her heart raced, and for a moment, she considered running back home, worried that her simple voice could never compare to others who seemed more confident and well-prepared. But then she remembered the countless mornings she had spent singing when no one was around, and the faces of her family cheering her on, reminding her that her voice was unique because it came from her heart. With a shaky breath, she began to sing. The room fell silent, and slowly, the judges and audience were drawn in, not just by her technical ability, but by the emotion she poured into every word. Her voice carried a story of struggle, hope, and resilience that was impossible to ignore. Tears welled up in the eyes of some listeners, and whispers of amazement filled the room. Despite her initial nervousness, she finished the song with a quiet confidence, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. The judges exchanged glances, impressed not just by her talent, but by the raw authenticity she displayed. At that moment, she realized that her dreams were no longer just distant fantasies. She had taken the first step, and the tiny spark of hope in her heart began to grow, fueled by the knowledge that her voice could touch others, and perhaps, change her life forever. After her unforgettable audition, the young Filipino girl's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The judges were moved not only by the beauty of her voice but also by the sincerity and vulnerability she conveyed with each note. One of the judges, a seasoned singer with years of experience, took her aside and offered advice on how to strengthen her technique while keeping the emotional depth that made her performances so unique. She listened intently, absorbing every word, grateful for guidance that felt both gentle and empowering. Meanwhile, word of her performance started spreading quickly on social media, as neighbors and friends posted clips of her singing, amazed by the raw talent emerging from such humble beginnings. Messages of support came from people she had never met, some even from other countries, encouraging her to continue pursuing her dream. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as she realized the scale of the audience now watching her journey unfold. Each compliment reminded her of why she had started singing in the first place, to express herself and touch hearts, and it gave her the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead seemed daunting. She began practicing with renewed focus, determined to refine her skills while maintaining the authenticity that had captured everyone's attention. Every note she sang was infused with hope, resilience, and the desire to inspire others, and she could feel herself growing both as a singer and as a person. As the competition progressed, the challenges intensified. Other contestants were talented and confident, and some had the resources and training that she could only dream of. Yet, every time she stepped onto the stage, she reminded herself that her strength lay not in fancy equipment or expensive lessons, but in the honesty of her performances. She poured her life experiences, the struggles, the small joys, and the love of her family, into every song, creating moments that resonated deeply with both judges and audiences. Behind the scenes, she often felt exhausted, juggling school responsibilities, household chores, and intense rehearsals, but the thought of inspiring others and the unwavering support of her family kept her going. Her younger siblings would sometimes watch her rehearse, their eyes wide with admiration, and her parents, though tired from long days of work, would encourage her with smiles and words of pride. The girl began to notice that people weren't just responding to her singing, they were connecting with her story, the courage it took to rise above her circumstances, and the genuine emotion she shared. Each applause, each tearful reaction, and each supportive comment reminded her that her voice had the power to move hearts, and that realization became her driving force. She started to see herself not just as a contestant in a competition, but as a young artist with the potential to make a lasting impact, and the thought of that possibility filled her with determination. The days leading up to her next performance were filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. She spent hours practicing, experimenting with different interpretations of her songs, always striving to convey her feelings as clearly as possible. She also worked on her stage presence, learning to engage the audience with her eyes and gestures, realizing that communication extended beyond her voice. When the next performance arrived, she walked onto the stage with a quiet confidence, feeling the energy of the crowd and the support of everyone who had followed her journey. As the music began, she let herself be completely immersed in the song, allowing every emotion, joy, struggle, hope, to flow naturally. By the time she finished, the audience was on their feet, clapping, cheering, and wiping away tears. The judges praised not only her growth as a performer but the depth of her heart, noting how rare it was to see such raw emotion paired with developing technical skill. She returned backstage overwhelmed with gratitude, realizing that every challenge she had faced, every moment of doubt, had led her to this point. In that instant, she understood that her journey was about far more than winning a contest. It was about inspiring people, sharing her truth, and proving that courage, persistence, and a genuine heart could overcome even the toughest obstacles. By the time the semifinals arrived, the young Filipino girl had become a favorite among audiences. Her journey from a small, humble home to performing on a stage with bright lights and a large crowd had inspired countless people. She carried with her not only the hopes of her family but also the encouragement of fans who had followed her story online, sending messages of support and admiration. The pressure was immense, every contestant was talented, and the judges' expectations were high. Yet she refused to let fear control her. She reminded herself that her strength lay in honesty and emotion, in the ability to reach people's hearts through her voice. As she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight highlighting her presence, she took a deep breath and began to sing. Every note was infused with years of longing, struggle, and determination, telling a story that resonated far beyond the lyrics themselves. The audience was captivated, some visibly moved to tears, and even the judges were silent for a moment, letting her voice fill the room. When she finished, the applause was deafening. The recognition she received in that moment went beyond talent. It was for courage, perseverance, and the authenticity that radiated from her every expression. She felt a mix of relief and exhilaration, realizing that her journey had already left an indelible mark on everyone who had witnessed it. Her story began to reach a global audience. Social media platforms were filled with clips of her performance, with viewers praising her heartfelt singing and humble beginnings. People were drawn to her not just as a performer but as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of following one's dreams despite the odds. She realized that her voice had become a tool for inspiration, capable of connecting with people she had never met, reminding them of the strength in vulnerability and persistence. Backstage, she reflected on how far she had come, from singing quietly in her tiny room with her family as her only audience, to standing in front of thousands of people who had been touched by her story. This awareness fueled her determination to give her absolute best in the finale. She wanted to honor everyone who had believed in her, especially her family, who had sacrificed so much to support her dream. Every practice session, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had led her to this point, and she was ready to pour everything she had into her final performance. The finale was an overwhelming experience. The stage was larger, the lights brighter, and the audience even more enthusiastic than she had imagined. As she walked out, she felt her heart race, but instead of fear, she allowed gratitude to guide her. She remembered the mornings she spent singing alone, the struggles her family faced, and the encouragement she had received along the way. With that in mind, she let her voice flow freely, conveying every ounce of emotion she had stored over the years. The judges and audience were visibly moved, many holding back tears as her performance reached its peak. She sang not for the prize, but for the story she carried, the story of a girl from humble beginnings who dared to dream and never gave up. By the time the final note faded, the audience erupted in a standing ovation, cheering not just for her talent, but for the courage and heart she had shown throughout her journey. Although she did not take the top prize, she had won something far greater: the respect, admiration, and hearts of thousands who had witnessed her rise. Returning backstage, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Her journey had proven that success is not solely defined by awards or recognition, but by the impact one leaves on others and the courage to follow one's dreams against all odds. Her story would continue to inspire, a reminder that genuine talent, paired with perseverance and a loving heart, can touch lives in ways nothing else can. She hugged her family tightly, tears flowing freely, realizing that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, a life filled with possibilities, hope, and the power of her voice to move the world. Her dream had grown beyond personal achievement; it had become a symbol of hope, proving that even from the humblest beginnings, one could rise and make a difference.